Today, I gotta show you my very first match in the Schlieffen. This ship is a ton of fun. I think this has gotta be one of the most enjoyable battleships to play at the moment. And that really just comes down to it being incredibly hyper specialized on the close range brawling damage output. This is a ship that isn't really gonna tank all that well. I'll talk more about that in a later video where I go over more about the ship and show different examples of things. But I found it to be a little bit squishy. You know, it's not going to be the ultimate tanking tier 10 battleship, that's for sure. But you are essentially the ultimate glass cannon, I would say, because of the damage output. Your secondaries are absolutely insane on this ship. And of course you have those long-range torpedoes that do actually really good damage. They just are really slow. And your main guns are alright too. They're not anything super special. Decent accuracy, but the pen isn't great and the alpha also isn't amazing. You get an okay reload though, to be fair. This build I'll go over later, but it is all in on the secondaries, if you're wondering. So the way that I've been playing this ship is I've been playing it as a bit of a flanker hit and run style of ship. The islands up north here on this map are perfect for this sort of playstyle. Sustained fights, 1v2s, that kind of thing, anytime you're outnumbered, multiple people shooting at you, that's really not where you want to be in the Schlieffen. At least that's what it seemed like so far. It's a ship that really excels at those 1v1 fights, supporting fights, pushing flanks that are open due to islands or just concealment, because that is one of the major strengths of this ship. You have a 12.6 kilometer concealment, which is amazing for a tier 10 battleship, especially one that goes as fast. You put a speed flag on here, I think you're getting up over 35 knots. I actually can't remember what it quite got up to, but it's a very, very fast battleship. And combined with that concealment, you can flank, you can get into positions that really no other battleship can. And due to your firepower, primarily from the secondaries, let's be honest here, people don't want to push into you. So you can hold corners of the map, you can hold strong positions, and it's very difficult for someone to root you out, unless they're a carrier. That's really what it comes down to. Your AA is pretty weak for a tier 10 battleship, and tier 10 battleships really don't have the best AA anyway. Since, you know, they don't really have defensive fire, and if they do, they generally aren't the best AA anyway, outside of Vermont. But even then, you're not really going to hold up against a carrier that really wants to kill you. So, assuming no carrier, or the carrier's busy somewhere else, using island cover is a very strong strategy. People won't want to go around corners on you because of these insane torpedoes. They're not going to have a destroyer come YOLO you because of the torpedoes and as well the secondaries. You have a great hydro, right? 6 kilometer hydro. It's very, very nice. And if you're going to get HE spammed, well, it's really difficult to keep this thing spotted since it's so stealthy. And of course, the damage controls are the Russian battleship fast-acting damage controls, which are so convenient. This is one of the reasons you're going to notice I actually don't have fire prevention. The Russian damage controls that come back so quickly are just that good. I think getting one extra of those and one extra heal is a little more important. Concealment, I would say, is pretty mandatory on this ship as well. You saw how much damage we took from that bomber. A ship not very well known for its alpha damage or ability to hit big salvos, right? Just because of its poor accuracy. But he did a solid 20k hit into us, even though we were reasonably well angled. This ship takes damage at many different angles, so taking sustained fights with the mainline German battleships is not really something you want to do. So people were asking me in chat earlier, would the GK beat this ship in a 1v1? And assuming that the GK was able to keep the Schlieffen spotted, I think so. I think the gunpowder and the health pool and the better armor would just win out, even though the secondaries are much better on something like the Schlieffen. It's a ship, though, that's not bad. That's not me saying it's worse than a GK, because GK just has some strengths that are pretty much great counters to this ship. Assuming you have more than 32 mil armor, we are running IFHE for these smaller caliber secondaries to get over that 32 mil armor barrier. you are pretty safe as long as you can shatter those secondaries. If you can't, though, you're going to be taking some pain. These things are nasty. Ohio accuracy level on these secondaries, and you get the German pen. And the DPM is absolutely monstrous. It's by far the most DPM on any battleship in the game for the secondaries. It's truly massive how good these things are at doing damage. The most amount of damage I've had so far, I think, is around 110k, and I've only been playing for a day, right? I've only played this ship for one single day, so it's pretty incredible what this thing's able to do. Just look at the... It's so funny to look at. Later on, when I do a follow-up video to this, maybe more of a review or something like that, I'll show you a match even where I was stealth firing my secondaries in one of those storms that we can see on certain maps. I was actually able to stay around 12 kilometers away from a Bismarck and just stealth secondary him to death. It's pretty funny. These secondaries are incredibly fun to use, and they're really good for finishing off low health targets. You're going to find you pick up probably a lot more kills than you normally would in other battleships, just because the DPM really helps to secure those final kills. But you notice the playstyle here. We've done a lot of damage so far, but we're really not in any threat of taking a sustained fight. That's what it really comes down to. Anytime that I've fully committed to a push or fully committed to a fight, I've died in this ship. That's really what it comes down to with this thing. It's not a ship you want to take sustained fights in. It is a ship that you want to be ducking in and out of cover, in and out of concealment, trying to do as much damage as you can in a short period of time, and then going dark and getting into cover. You don't really want to take those long duration fights because you don't have the HP and you don't have the armor for it. You have the concealment and you have the speed to play this way. And I think that is going to be the best way to make use of this ship. And honestly, the other tiers as well. It took me a while to figure that out when playing the Tier 9 a lot before these fully released in early access. It took a long time for me to really realize that these ships aren't going to be good in a sustained fight with ships that have more HP, better guns, better armor than it. It makes sense when I say it like that, but it took me a while because I think ultimate brawling battleship, best secondaries in the game, it's like, oh, well, I just want to be in secondary range all the time. It's not necessarily the case. So playing like this kind of hit and run style is going to be the way to go, I think. It's not the easiest thing to do on all maps, and there's times where I've been caught out and I've died very, very quickly to especially long-range HE spam. Even though you have these fast-acting damage controls, there's still not enough to counteract just the sheer firepower of some of the longer-range HE spammers at Tier 10. They're really, really strong, and you do have to watch out. So that's why island cover, using concealment, I think is just that important on a ship like this one. But it's really fun. It's a really, 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 really fun battleship. So much so that it really makes me think that GK could use a little buff on its close range secondary firepower. There's a large difference in the power level of the secondaries on these ships. And the GK guns, while you have more, aren't really all that much better. They still don't overmatch more than this thing, and their pen is slightly better, and they have slightly higher alpha. But you have to go much more broadside to get them. So to me, it seems like the GK, or I guess the Prussia, or whatever it's called, that's replacing the GK, could use a little bit of help there, but maybe not, considering GK's strength has always been its better armor. Although it has a massive superstructure. That's something else I wanted to talk about on this ship really quick. The superstructure is tiny, so having a reasonably well-armored deck results in HE spammers having to precisely aim for your superstructure or hit you on the bow and the stern, because of course those are 27 millimeters, at least the upper bow and upper stern. You do have a bit of an icebreaker, but the smaller superstructure is really, really quite nice when you're dealing with people that have worse dispersion. Of course, it's still relatively big, but in comparison to a GK, it is pretty small. And that feels really nice coming from a ship like that, where you feel like at any angle when you're playing a GK, you're just taking huge hits to your superstructure. This ship, not so much. It's just that your hull isn't as strong, so now you're taking hits to your hull at a lot of different angles. So it's a bit of a trade-off, but I do really enjoy playing the Schlieffen. Something else you should really know about is the turret angles on this ship. It surprised me a little bit coming from the Prince Ruprecht. It's something that isn't really all that noticeable, but the Prince Ruprecht rear turret, right, it's 360 degrees, it actually has really good firing angles where you can auto bounce. The Schlieffen doesn't. If you're getting your rear turrets off, you're liable to be hit for 15, 20, 25k. I've been slapped in this thing, barely able to get my rear guns off. So just be careful of that if you're playing this ship. But it's a lot of fun. It's a ton of fun, this ship, and I've really been enjoying it. Expect to see a lot more of it on the channel in the coming weeks. The build I'm using on this ship is exactly the same as I've been using all along in the Prince Ruprecht. It is an all-out secondary build. I talked a little bit about the emergency repair expert already over fire prevention. You could argue that fire prevention over concealment, but I think that hit and run playstyle benefits more from concealment. I think that's going to just be a little bit better overall than trying to fully tank with fire prevention, since you're going to take a lot of alpha damage through your hull anyway, that, you know, the fires aren't as big of a deal. Of course, we're taking full manual secondaries, range. I'm also taking Adrenaline Rush, trying to get the reload on these secondaries down. We have Luchins to get the secondary reload down, and of course, IFHE. That's giving the secondaries, at least the smaller caliber ones, 32 mil pen. That's really important here. And 47 mil pen on the 150s doesn't really matter as much, but that's mainly because these 105s are your main source of damage. You have like 10 of them per side? 12 of them per side. Sorry. 6 turrets, 2 guns in each. That's a lot. That's where a lot of the firepower from these secondaries comes from. This is really where you're taking your pain, though. You know, it seems like a small target, but you get hit here relatively regularly, especially here, as people try and hit you kind of into your superstructure, right? If you're angled, which you probably want to be angled in this ship, they're going to be aiming for this general area. Shells will hit here, do full pen damage. Shells will hit here, do full pen damage. So even though the superstructure is smaller, that's much nicer, the armor leaves a bit to be desired. And I think that's a good thing. We wouldn't want this thing to be an all-out tank on top of its immense secondary firepower. The equipment on this ship, I am full secondary, like I said. Auxiliary Armaments mod is hilarious fun to use, and 2.1 second reload base is incredibly fun. Concealment, of course, I'm running propulsion mod. I find this ship very slow to accelerate or stop, so at least helping with the acceleration is pretty nice. You already have a decent rudder on this thing, so running the acceleration mod helps a little bit. Secondary range and accuracy, very nice. I'm running Hydro mod, since you only get 3 of them, but you probably could just get away with damage control system mod. And we're trying to keep the secondaries alive, of course, so we're doing auxiliary armaments. That's the Schlieffen. That's the first game, at least. This thing is awesome. I think that you Battleship players out there, even you heavy cruiser players out there, would like this thing. It's a ton of fun and very worthwhile grinding, especially since the tier 9 is so good as well. The longest part of your grind is actually quite fun. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day.